Winter Wood. It was on a winter's evening that I took the winding path. The night was cold with falling ice, and I craved a warming hearth. The pony walked behind me as I led him by the halter. My hands had frozen in their gloves, and I hoped he wouldn't falter. As we plodded slowly onwards, I saw the moon up high, glowing through the waving trees and smudged in a cloudy sky. The snow was drifting softly down from that band of cloud. It settled all around me like a soft and woolly shroud. His barn was half a mile away, just up beyond the wood. The flakes were landing on my face, and my coat had lost its hood. There was no other option, and I veered into the trees. The pony followed after me, if only just to please. There was a stillness in the air, and the scent of Mother Nature, but unlike most of Mother's tricks, with this there was no danger. I heard the cry of tawny owls that echoed through the night, and I saw one slice the darkness, a ghost in silent flight. It did not take us long, the walk, and soon we reached his barn. It was here that I left him munching straw, and it's here I'll end this yarn. Stars. Look at the stars, the angel said, as she sat at the foot of my attic bed. See how they shine with eternal light. Look how they sparkle in the silent night. Each star is a soul, an infinite spark, but souls only shine when seen in the dark. That's why there is darkness on our little earth, so we have the chance of spiritual rebirth. Just like the candle next to your pillow, softly glowing with a calming yellow. So go back to sleep and do not stir, and I'll give you a bowl full of sweet-smelling myrrh. For Christ received myrrh from kings from afar, and he slumbered in peace beneath his own bright star. Watering flowers in the sunshine. I'm watering flowers in the sunshine, trickling water, tepid breeze, in a swathe of many colours. I'm watering flowers in the sunshine. Toffee, the ginger cat, is playing in the garden, jumping at flies or pouncing at the slithering hose as though it were a snake. I'm watering flowers in the sunshine. I watch the spray dripping off the petals in silver drops. I sniff the roses. They smell of country houses and walled gardens. I'm watering flowers in the sunshine. Maya the spaniel has a stick in her mouth. She wants me to throw it, asking me with soppy eyes. But I'm watering flowers in the sunshine. I soak the rainforest of potato plants, letting the water penetrate down through the soil like an Amazon storm. I'm watering flowers in the sunshine. It's a very peaceful pastime, just me, the animals, and nature. We are all watering flowers in the sunshine. Winter comforts. What makes me happy during winter? Roaring fires on a frosty evening, the sweet smell of wood smoke on a quiet village street, steaming chicken soup with noodles after a cold, brisk walk, hot water bottles with that comforting smell of warm rubber, that all-enveloping cloak of darkness, whispered voices with a soporific tone, rolling fields and country lanes under a layer of unblemished snow. It's a harsh world we live in, though often it's softer than we think. The last train home. We've under half an hour to catch the last train home. We've just gone past the Duomo, and behind us is the Dome. The narrow streets we pass along are bathed in yellow light. We're in the heart of Florence, and it's 10:30 at night. We dodge the speeding mopeds as we cross another road. We see the shuttered windows and long for our own abode. We reach the train and find our seats with 13 minutes to spare. A man shows up with a ticket machine to validate our fare. We rattle through the humid night with the windows open wide. The carriage curtains billow and flap as we listen to the wind outside. At last we reach our station and stagger off the train. The day has been long and tiresome, and our limbs are feeling the strain. To our left is a little cemetery with the headstones glowing red, from row upon row of burning lamps, night lights for the dead. As we close the doors to our rental car, resting our heads on padded foam, there's no longer cause to worry about catching the last train home. Singing to the seals. I strolled upon the beach when the storm had passed it by. The sea was green and swollen like the rain clouds in the sky. I strolled upon the beach among the broken creels. My grandmama was singing to the seals. She whistled on the beach, far out into the water, and there upon a spit of sand the sea lions sat and watched her. Enchanted by her song, they flopped into the waves, pulled along by curiosity like shining, slippery slaves. We've dived into the sea ourselves and swam through shifting tides. The seals appeared above the surface like stunning kelpie brides. The seabed never found us, never found our heels, while Grandmama was singing to the seals. And out of the water came a pair of eyes, bobbing about on the dip and the rise. It gazed at me softly with a curious stare, as though it had something it wanted to share. A spark of wisdom or a simple greeting. I'll always remember that special meeting. And I'll always remember how great it feels when Grandmama is singing to the seals. Oyster. I am an oyster at the bottom of the sea. That is who I am. That is me. I prefer to stay within my shell and pulsate with an energy. This is who I am. This is me. Sometimes I stick my head out so that those in the vicinity can be sure of seeing me. I try to touch their lives with a current of warmth and glee. That is who I am. That is me. The ocean is a vast expanse that I cannot explore, but there is darkness in its depths that I cannot ignore. I am a lonely oyster upon the ocean bed. I feel the ocean's sadness, but have only my pearls to shed. My pearls are all I have to give. My pearls are things of beauty. That is the reason I exist. That is my spiritual duty. And I can only hope, and I can only pray, that they will fling themselves upon you like drops of ocean spray. Watching the sheep. I couldn't sleep that summer night. Too many things to ponder. So I rose, and pulling on my shoes, went out for a quiet wander. I reached a field of scattered ewes that bleated in the moonlight. So I stayed, and lighting up a cigarette, watched the sheep that summer night. How calm they seemed, content as well. They didn't fret or scurry. What with grass and the balmy air, they had no cause to worry. The schoolmarm's bell. It clamours and clangs through the building, reverberating from wall to ceiling, calling you to rise or dine. It's like a schoolmarm's bell, reducing one to the status of children in a boarding house. A big brass bell that's rung by hand. Rung or swung, I hardly see the difference. She seems to have a zeal for it. Clang, clang, clang through the building. That grand, imposing building with its red brick walls, its never-ending stairs and passages, its idols and statues, its dark wooden panels and the cell-like rooms. It's an institution we are in, not a sanctuary. The Monk Cemetery. Simple wooden crosses for simple men of God. They stand in rows, their shadows cast upon the ground by the sinking orange sun. It's a peaceful place, a place of earthly beauty for souls who once worshipped Earth's creator. Only one has a tribute, a delicate silk ribbon gently tied around its base. There is no wind. Angels have put the monks to sleep. The pretty young queen. She is beautiful, so they say, so full of grace and charm. No man can resist her, so they say, but in truth they would do her harm. I speak of the lords of this land. They are traitors beyond reproach. They are plotting her death, a sin against God. But this topic is dangerous to broach. So much suspicion and so much betrayal. This country is falling apart. Religion, religion, it is all for religion. And the Tudors regard it like art. The play. We are born. The curtains rise. We take our first breath, our first careful steps. Scene 1, Act 1. Our life is a play. It has a script already learned. But an actor must not anticipate his lines. He must get into character. He must play out his part as though it were real, as though he doesn't know what's coming next. The soul is the actor, our personalities the character, and our director watches from the gods. Soul. All that I have, I give to you, in a cocoon wrapped in leaves, in a shell bound in seaweed. I am your friend, your partner, your counsel. I was your mother, your savior, your carefree hope. I am the wind in your hair, the earth beneath your feet. I am your soul. The fairy's golden heart. Beyond the little lochen and in amongst the trees, there dwells a radiant fairy queen that no one ever sees. She rules her fairy kingdom with a heart of solid gold, but her story is a sad one that hasn't yet been told. She was born beneath the fairy mounds one freezing winter night. The earth had frozen over and everywhere was white. Her mother's health was waning and her father dead and gone. He'd flown to fairy heaven where the moonlight always shone. It was clear that she would follow him unless her strength returned. The winter months had weakened her, and now the fever burned. She could not feed her newborn child. She had no other choice. She had to give the babe away, despite the warning voice. It was the voice of doubt she heard that rang within her ears. Your child must stay inside this mound, or die within 2 years. But still she would not listen, and gave her to the mice. They wrapped her up and took her home, deep below the ice. They fed her wild berries they'd gathered during spring. They showed her to the blackbird, who taught her how to sing. But as the weeks went on and on, her skin began to pale. They knew they didn't have much time before her heart would fail. When ice and snow had all but gone, They journeyed to the mystic hill, and there they found a wizened soul who cured the sick and ill. He peered through tiny lenses at the infant small and cold. There was only one thing for it, and that was a heart of gold. He carved it from his own supply and placed it in her chest. Always keep her warm, he said, and allow her lots of rest. There's just one thing to tell you before you leave my side. There is one tiny little rule, but one you must abide. She must have found a husband within 100 years, or else the heart will start to melt, and she'll weep pure golden tears. The mice took heed of all he said, and kept her safe and well. They did not speak of melting hearts to a girl too young to tell. But at last, when she was old enough, they spoke to her at length. They told her she must marry soon, or forfeit all her strength. But the fairy did not listen, and flew off through the trees. She bathed in quiet lochans, eating honey from the bees. She thought the notion foolish, a heart can never melt. She'd marry when it suited her, no matter how they felt. 40 years had passed by now, the way it does in fairyland. She daydreamed in the moonlight, and saw her life unfurled. She saw a life of utter bliss, riding through the midnight wood. There was no one to hold her back, as only a husband could. And so she lived her life of bliss in any way she chose, and forgot about her golden heart until the day it froze. The air went cold around her, and her limbs began to shake. She felt a longing in her breast, and her heart began to ache. It was a man she longed for, in a way she'd never known. It was in the earth around her that the seeds of love were sown. She landed in the branches of a giant sprawling beech. She cried her tears of melting gold, high up out of reach. The mice had spoken only truth 100 years ago, and now she knew it was too late. She'd broken Cupid's bow. It was then she heard a quiet voice that came from up above, and all at once she ceased to cry, for it spoke of joy and love. As she turned her head towards the voice, her heart began to wince, for seated on the branch above was the handsome fairy prince. "Although your tears are beautiful, there is no need to cry. Pray tell me what is wrong, my dear, though I do not wish to pry." She told him all about herself, and all about her heart. She told him that her time had come, now her world would break apart. The prince reached down and wiped her tears, then clasped her tender hand. "Marry me, and you will be the Queen of Fairyland." Now the wedding bells were tolling, and everyone was there. The prince was dressed in shining blue, beside his maiden fair. Beyond the little lochen, and in amongst the trees, there dwells a radiant fairy queen that no one ever sees. She rules her fairy kingdom with a heart of solid gold. Her story is a hopeful one, and one that's just been told.